Yes, welcome back. This is F a Rap Critic. I'm your boy Malik 16, and no, this is not a paid endorsement. I just don't really know how we could go any further with the review of this album without showing a picture's worth 1,000 words. Something that I mentioned in category one of video one when we were talking about mass appeal and the marketing and rollout for this album, which brought you dope concepts like the crossover between Rapsody and this company, the very dope agency and design brand, Cool Creative. And what happened is during the time of the release of this album, which is the album we're talking about today, Eve by Rapsody, part of our Young Classics, they had a campaign going where you could get your own custom-made jacket like you see Rapsody wearing in the promo pictures, featuring these dope patches, which is something that they do on the regular on their site and offer for leather jacket, camo jackets, and just some of their shirts with the icons from Black history of your choice. As you see, you also get to have a custom letter patch of your choosing. There's a couple styles, and I went with the M. You'll see Rapsody with the R. Other popular figures who I've seen rocking this custom brand with Fab, Charlamagne the God. You got the C. You'll see him rocking his every now and then. But I did want to highlight some of the people who I chose for my patches, right? So going down my arm, I got Martin Luther the King himself. Everybody gets stuck on this young lady here. This is Assata Shakur, known to some of y'all as Joanne Chesimard, Malcolm, because you can't have Martin without Malcolm. And then on the other arm, I got Mandela, freedom fighter, right? Speaking of fighter, I got the greatest of all time, Ali. And then we got the one that might have shot you herself, Miss Tubman. And keeping it near and dear to my heart, Miss Felicia Rashad in her Claire Huxtable form. It gets no more perfect than that. That's perfection. So yeah, this was probably one of the dopest crossover marketing campaigns that I've seen in my lifetime, in my industry experience, inside and outside. And just wanted to shout out the dope company, Cool Creative. Shout out to you, deviating from promoting my own brand, but never deviating too far. Go hit up the Rap Ruler, cop the I Used to Love a t-shirt. You can't see the full thing here. Go to the website where you can see the full thing. There's no better feeling than when the timing is perfect. It aligns so well. Happy Mother's Day to all you out there. This is also within the same time frame of the release of Rapsody's first album in 5 years since the one that we're talking about. And with no further ado, I will return you to your regularly scheduled program. We might flip the script a little and go back in time in the time machine, rewind it. I'm going to take the jacket off and let the proceedings proceed. All right. Not going to waste your time. We're going to jump right into it. First dimension in category 2 is dimension 1. Personality and charisma. All right, this is something, a lot of male commentators catch flack for when they mention, because the argument is that it's emphasized more on female rappers than it is on male rappers. I got to do my research on that, because I can see it, but I also don't know if it's unwarranted. Historically, a lot of female rappers have come from a base of poetry first, whereas male rappers, they may mention it, but it might be something they wrote in private, not reciting it, right? And I think that reciting element is the telltale heart for a lot of female rappers that makes it easier to call out, because it's in their cadence, how they present, and it also has an effect on how expressive you are when you transfer that to the microphone. We'll talk more about that in delivery, but Rapsody is coming into her flexibility on this album, and with that comes a greater sense of dynamism in how she's presenting who she is on the microphone, right? So the brag rap is slicker. There's a little bit more confidence and comfort with what she's saying. She's tapping into being able to deliver coolness and flexing a little bit, because now there's something to flex about, right? And so it's hard to have this conversation without bleeding into the next dimension. I don't know if charisma is present. There is a personality because there's a space that she's occupying that's not really being filled in hip hop by not too many men or women. And so it makes it easier for her to exist as this unique entity, Rapsody, where she's at least remembered, and her presence is markable. All right, she's not a forgettable person, but I don't know if there's that compelling element or charm or even bite or sass to make you say, you know, if we were thinking of adjectives when people describe their favorite rappers, I don't know what the adjective that would precede Rapsody's mention would be besides she's nice, she can spit. But I don't know if people are like, you know, she's wild or she's, you know, witty would be a great descriptor, I think, for her. But you'd have to be a listener to really understand how much wit she's employing. So that would be the closest. But let me know if you guys come up with something else that stamps and defines more what her personality is on this album. I think she revels in being the home girl, the down south version of Around the Way girl, who will wear a dad hat like this. And there's a humility to it, but she's bragging all over this album. So maybe the claim to fame is the humble brag. There's something to consider on the scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 2, the suspension of disbelief versus the believability. So this is what I was getting at, where I say her confidence now allows her claims of cool or her expression of cool to be a little bit more believable than ever. When she says, I just put an Audi out the garage, that's not an outlandish claim. That's an easy claim to see, and she justifies it by reminding you how she earned it, that she got it, that she's been in here for a minute working on her craft and earns every spoil that she gets, right? The fact that she's laughing at the end of Michelle after she does the callback to the LL Cool J song is naming everybody in the studio or in her girl crew who's there. They got a big old button, and she starts laughing at the end. She's like, yo, we wild. Yo. You can tell she's trying to induce the fun of that song. She's trying to induce that spirit of fun and let you know that she can have fun, and she does, and she's allowing herself to it. The vulnerability of speaking about self-love and falling in love with her features and her skin and her blackness and all of that, that is appealing. That is her not pretending. That's her being comfortable in her lane. That's her not trying. I think more than anything on this album, you hear Rapsody figuring out that there's a way to make just being cool without having to prove it or repeat it a bunch of times. She's just like, nah. And I think there's always been a level of that casualness. But here, you know, the comfort and confidence are meeting in a place where cool is actually okay. When she gets aggressive, even that is rooted somewhere. She's not talking about having people, you know, getting the goons. She might make subtle references to like being able to call a crew who can deal with you, but it's still not in any detailed fashion. She's like, oh, my people will roll you up and bury you somewhere where you never be found. That's not happening, right? She'll say clever lines like, who wants smoke? Half the crew is blunt rollers or something like that, right? She's also able to invoke and evoke. which is not easy to do. When she wants to be aggressive, you at least are aware that, okay, she's being more aggressive here. When she wants to be passionate about a gem that she's dropping, you get that. When you hear a track like Afeni, you really get how deeply she believes in what she's saying. I'm asking and telling you at the same time. She makes it very clear. So there's a strength to that song and a vulnerability, but not from a Rapsody standpoint. She is speaking very comfortably for Black women in general, because she's not saying points that haven't been raised for decades, especially in recent media. And it's not in a polarizing way. She's not saying believe all women or Black women are the least protected. She's just saying, like, listen, if this is you, if this is the behavior you've been doing to your Black women, we need you to stop that. We need you to teach your other brother, do better, and this is what we need. And it's not trite, doesn't seem contrived, like, oh, here's my song where I talk about that. It's like, come on now. It's in the same vein as UNITY by Queen Latifah. Queen Latifah wasn't trying to wave a girl power flag. It was just like, look, this is what we need. Y'all need to do better. And I'm going to give it to you raw and straight. Where Rapsody still may struggle is on getting us to believe her as the party time person, or the club person, or the get you hyped up person, right? So, and she's like, dollars circulate. It still sounds like her trying to learn how to make hooks to get the crowd going. She's most in pocket where it's a simple hook or someone else is doing the hook, because the party song, Michelle, it's like, okay, it sounds like someone trying to make a party song. It reminds me of me when I was cutting tracks that were given to me and I was told, make a hit. But then told at the same time, be yourself. So it's like trying to make something that lines up with the crazy stuff that's getting played while trying not to say that crazy stuff. It's an art. It's an art, and it's an earnest attempt. It doesn't sound contrived, but it just doesn't sound like it's second nature to her. So it comes out like, all right, here's what I'm doing. I'm doing all the things on this song. I'm trying to make a, oh yeah. And then I'm going to do the big old butt thing at the end. And it's not a suspension of disbelief album, because she's not assuming a character. She's mentioning all of these other people who exist and titling her songs that, but she's not telling you she's turning into any of them. She's channeling them, but not turning into them. So it's a straight up album, and the question is, how much does she make you believe her on this album? Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. It takes us to dimension 3, the delivery and use of voice. Now, Rapsody has a very distinct and unique voice, but now Rapsody has a very interesting voice for the fact that she has kind of a closed mouth lisp kind of thing going on, and it's probably a voice that if most people heard on her come up, they would discourage her from rapping, because it's not the easiest voice to translate to making rap songs. Somehow she's found a way to make it work and make a dope career out of it. But well, I mentioned in the first dimension, this is her coming into it, learning how to play with her voice, learning how to manipulate inflections, and it seemed very inspired by who she was collaborating with a lot for the past years leading up to that, which were, Mac Miller and Kendrick. A lot of Kendrick influence in the way that she started exaggerating words and animating certain words. It felt not natural. It felt like her trying to inject that to become more free and not as stiff. And this is why I mentioned, coming from a poetry background, you can usually tell because there's still that spoken word element that a lot of female rappers hold on to as they are finding their voice. And so this is peak Rapsody. This is Rapsody having found her voice and now trying to become more playful with that newfound voice. Yeah, so like some of the exaggeration sounds like, and I'm way, like she chooses to make her voice deep on certain parts, again in an animated way, and chooses to make her voice high on certain parts in an animated way, like abruptly. Then she does a whispery thing, right? She's like, yeah, and then that repeating thing that she does, very interesting. Like I really didn't understand what she was doing in the beginning of Ibtihaj, where she kept saying, boy, you sharp, boy, like, and then even the wave, it's like that wave, it didn't marry with the beat at all. It didn't take the beat or the direction of the hook anywhere that was rhythmically pleasing. It just sounded like she was trying to do something different. And that's what I mean, like when she does those spots in her delivery, it sounds like an attempt, and it sticks, and it kind of works. Even the decision to woo woo on Maya, I don't know what she was really doing there. It's again her experimenting with her freeness. It doesn't hurt the song, but it was just interesting. that was her piece on the hook. It is memorable. It got the job done, right? But those are the things that color the delivery and use of voice on this album. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 4, the flow. Oh boy, the flow. You know, speaking to that rigidity there is the technical aspect of things, and then there is the effect. It's on the technical side, from a rhyme sequence and rhyme structure standpoint, Rapsody is trying different flows all throughout this album, but she sounds way more comfortable on a track like Sojourner, where there's a definite pattern over that bass line. There's a bounce to her cadence and approach. Ironically, she sounds the most comfortable over the faster pickup double time type tracks. So on Whoopi and on Serena, where she's bouncing and adding more syllables to keep up with that, there's way more fluidity happening than on tracks like Merle, or even like Michelle, the Party song, where she's trying to make something happen. Ibtihaj being probably the greatest example of there being a track with no flow at all. It's just words while the beat is playing in the background. It's not lining up where there's a definite following of the drum track, the bass line, anything. She's just there and existing. And it could be because of that little transition part in the beat where doom 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 doom. Hard to really follow that while you're rapping, but most of the songs on here, there's not a definitive flow. It's not characterized by her like riding the beat in any incredible way. She's definitely a more words first, flow after type rapper, and she doesn't go off beat. That's the saving grace. But for all intents and purposes, the flows attempted are different. Again, the standouts being Serena and Whoopi, where she's trying to have a more bouncy, open, spaced out flow on Oprah, and she's being super wordy on Cleo and Tyra. So something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. All right, that takes us to dimension 5, the wordplay. Ooh. Wordplay is where Rapsody shines throughout this album. There are lines that you will have to rewind to catch and listen to in accordance with the title of the song and some schemes and themes that she's trying to carry. So I mentioned on Tyra, she starts referencing fashion type bars, especially towards the final verse. Maya, she's doing things like the wordplay where she starts breaking down numbers, right? Where she says 2 + 2 times 2, that's 4 plus 4. Then she says something about 1, but then she says 3 times a lady, like a singing Commodore, because I can't be, which takes us right into the hook, which is the Maya Angelou reference. I know why the cage bird sings. I can't be a bird in a cage. A singing Commodore. The song 3 Times a Lady is a song by the Commodores, written by Lionel Richie, who was a member at the time. And it's like, oh snap. So you're getting that high level of wordplay, and all throughout that track in particular, Maya, she's doing that. No idle time unless you Barrino. Reference to Fantasia Barrino on American Idol, blowing up from there, because she's like, you gotta grind. I'll put up examples from that song all throughout, because out of all songs on the album, she maximizes her skill set of wordplay on that song. It's almost to the detriment of some other tracks where she chooses some lazy lines in between. It's like, whoa, I heard you do this. You can't fumble and stumble on these other songs and phone it in on some of these lines, because the bar has been raised so high. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Equally as important, Dimension 6, the overall quotability, punchlines, and poetic wisdom. So while I don't hear this album quoted a lot in all the write-ups on it, there's plenty of quotes. And a lot of that is due to Rapsody's ability to mix braggadocio with gem dropping, with food for thought, with poetic wisdom. Rapsody's also a Southern rapper. She's from Carolina. One defining feature, or one recurring feature that you'll hear me mention when we're talking about Southern artists, is that they have this old soul, conventional wisdom thing that comes from them either repeating phrases and sayings and ideas that were passed on from the older generation, the elders in their lives, or it's just in their way of life, right? So she'll say things that hold weight, even when she's doing tongue-in-cheek ad-libs, like when she says, "Smooth sea never made a good sailor," and that's a quote I found from Google. That's still the kind of stuff that you would hear her say, even when she doesn't get it from Google, when she gets it from herself. Punchlines are there, but punchlines, she's not living to emphasize them. They're slipped in because there's so much wordplay coming at you a mile a minute that she's not going to waste the time to point it out and follow it up with get it? She's not doing that. So yeah, it's being done at a high frequency on a high level. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Takes us to Dimension 7, the concepts. Since we mentioned this album is entirely a loose concept album, when we think about any individual songs that are conceptual, there are a couple, but they themselves are loosely conceptual. I mentioned Oprah being the Money song, loosely, right? Maya being this song of braggadocio, freedom while recognizing limitations, because it's a reference to the idea of I know why the cage bird sings. Tyra being this ode to black beauty and loving black skin and loving blackness, and damn I'm fine, this self-love ode, which differs from Iman, where it's like, this is why black is sexy. This is more of a sexual appreciation of blackness, while Tyra is more of a beauty, aesthetic, confidence appreciation. So this conceptual material, it's all loose, but when you add it up together, the sum is greater than its parts. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to the content dimensions. Dimension 8, the externalized content. Okay. Lots of social issues being talked about here. Black love, women love, queen to queen, recognition, man to queen recognition, and money, relationships, going out, partying. And, I mentioned Rapsody does this thing where she speaks for the whole and for herself in ways where I don't think most people would object. It's like, hey, I'm a representative of these cultures, so I can speak for these cultures. Now, that takes us to dimension 9, the internalized content. How much of herself is she giving? I think there's vulnerability in so many of the verses. She tells you her journey. It's almost like movies where you don't have to have watched part 1 or part 2 to get an understanding of part 3. This album gives you so much of an introduction to Rhapsody's journey that you didn't have to be along for the whole ride if this is your first time listening to her. She tells you what life lessons, family lessons, the grind in this business, where she's at now, how she got there, and not in any super explicit way, right? There's no song on here where it's like, here's my life story. She gives you slices of her life in most of the songs, to the point where it's weird to kind of pinpoint how, but she fulfills that need because she doesn't shy away from telling you her fears, her challenges that she's overcome, and she shares that with you in relatable ways. So, while there's no definitive song about it, it's there. So, something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Takes us to the final dimension 10, the storytelling. There's no direct story on here. Interestingly enough, there's story elements in pieces and bits on this album, but there is not a story. Wow. And you know what I'm going to say? That is up to you to determine if that is a takeaway from the album, if that brings it down in any shape, form, or fashion on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. And on that note, we conclude the Category 2 review of a young classic in the canon that a lot of people will be talking about down the line. And so go visit the Rap Ruler. Until next time, next album, y'all know what it is. F a Rap Critic. They talk about it while I live it. Word to Matt.